Good evening, Facebook family and our YouTube family as well. Welcome to another session with Brian and Janice. We're so delighted to have you join us today on this wonderful Sunday evening. We pray that everybody has had a wonderful and blessed week as we journey on to our next week. Today we're going to do something a little different. It's going to be more of an open session, so I can ask if you have questions for Brian. You're more than welcome to chime in and ask those questions because we can see them online. Also, we are going to ask you to, feel free to ask anything that you want to, and Brian will be more than happy to answer it. We can see it from everything. So, for those of you that are coming on for the very first time, Brian, you're terrible. For those of you joining us for the very first time, we've been doing this since May, and we are embarking onto a new year. So we are wanting you to join in and, like I said, ask questions if you like. I want to start out today with a very, very important question. A very important question to all of us. What is it we are expecting from this new leadership, this new government? What are you expecting from this government? I also want to say that, hi, Crystal. we want to make this a little more informal today. So feel free to ask whatever you like, as I said earlier. But we need to all be cognizant of what we actually want from this government. What we want from Biden and Kamala and the new Senate and Congress. If we don't make our demands known, they won't happen. We've already got some serious inquiries and questions about people that were out there on the front lines fighting Black Voters Matter, Black Lives Matter, that are already questioning the important cabinet that Biden has already selected. So that should raise an alarm consciously in a lot of our minds, and we are not looking. Have we not looked at that? But I'm gonna be honest, Brian has said this from the very beginning of this show, and I'm gonna ask him again to tell us exactly what we are embarking upon from this new cabinet, from this new administration that's gonna govern the United States of America.
Well, I think that's a good question, Janice. We should not expect anything from this cabinet and appointment that we have not gotten from other previous administrations. What do I mean when I say that? And the reason that I say that is I think Black people need to become cognizant of the fact that our government is still operating off of an old design. And when I say an old design, we're talking about going back to the creation of the Constitution in 1787, and then in 1788 it was ratified, 1789 it was put into effect. Nothing has changed by way of that. So when we look at what we're dealing with as African American people not being a part of these United States at that time and not considered to be part of the United States, we were left out of the lawmaking process. Okay. So in saying that, this administration is it is no different. It's the same administration that you would see up under any Democratic nominee. Okay. So his administration is not going to do anything different from any previous Democratic administrations. Number one, they're going to focus on immigration. They're going to focus on diversity. They're going to focus on the inclusion of the LGBTQ community. So that's part of the diversity package. They're going to focus on aid going to immigrants that are actually coming over, seeking asylum, whatever it may be. This administration efforts are going to be concentrated towards those things. Unfortunately, they're not going to focus much on Black issues at hand. What do I mean when I say Black issues at hand? the economic disparity that exists within our community. There will be no focus on that. The education disparity that exists in our community, there will be very limited focus on that. The focus that may come through the education channels may be in the direction of the promotion of more charter school systems, which simply is a privatization of public schools to filter money away from our public school systems into the hands of those privately run organizations that are not benefited, that are not set up to benefit the interest of Black people. So the Democratic administration is going to do the same that all Democratic administrations have done.
Wow.
If that kind of give you some insight there.
You know, a lot of us live in areas that we have not seen a lot of immigrants. Me, for one, coming from Selma, Alabama, 10 plus years ago, it wasn't a lot of immigrants. But on my shifting to Montgomery and now to Deatsville and Millbrook area and the Prattville area, we're seeing massive amounts of immigrants. We're seeing their businesses. We're seeing their businesses are coming up by the dozens in small communities like this that I live in. And to me, that's shocking because I'm not seeing Black businesses come about. Also, in the stores, we're seeing more of them working in the stores. And as Brian reminded me again today, this was all a part of Obama's plan with the DACA. Okay? Am I right, Brian? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
And I like to be diplomatic in whatever we talk about. Okay, and factual as well. Okay. Okay. So when we look at DACA, DACA paved the way, okay, for citizenship of at the time what was considered to be illegal, undocumented immigrants. Okay, that is the actual summation of what DACA does. It paves the way of citizenship to undocumented immigrants that are either born here, those are the children that are born of immigrants that are undocumented. And what DACA declares is that those children that are born to immigrants that are already in this country should have the same rights and privileges as a citizen, but there's a process in doing that. So that is like I said, the summation of it. What we're actually seeing, what you're referring to, Janice, as it relates to immigration laws, totally different from the DACA laws, okay? Because the DACA laws dealt specifically with the children
that were born here.
Born here. Okay,
right.
So the immigration laws, like I said, is horse of a different color, so to speak, guys, because the immigration laws, there have been revisions every 5 to 10 years. There are revisions of the immigration laws that were put in place in 1789 up under the Naturalization and Immigration Act. That law has changed throughout the years and the centuries to what it is today. Most immigration laws support the building of the immigrant that comes to this country by way of tax breaks and federal grants and loan programs. So that's why you see some of the immigrants that come over here have access to finances that we that have been over here for a while don't have, okay? So when we look at that, yes, any type of immigration program is specifically set up and designed to continue to push African people who are already at the bottom of the social ladder to continue to push them further down to the point to where they become non-existent in society. Doesn't mean that you're not here, but what it means is that you are not a player when it comes to driving the economy and when it comes to being part of the intellectual stimuli of this country. Okay, so what happens is we are relegated to being no more than continued form of slavery as it relates to being put into prisons. Our black young men and now even our young women are being arrested and imprisoned at an alarming rate, more so than any other group of people now that's being imprisoned. So what we see, that's why you see even right here in Alabama, the $5 billion enslavement project that they're calling mega prisons. All it is concentration camps for black people that are being pushed out of the working class society, in not only in this state, but in this country. So you got to have some place to put those people. See, when you move them out of the menial jobs, such as the Winn-Dixies, the Walmarts,
The factories.
the factories,
The plants.
even
Yes.
the McDonald's, the Hardee's, whatever the case may be. Okay, when you move them out of those type of labor jobs, they have to have a place to put those people.
Wow.
When you replace them with immigrants that come in who will work what this country says is twice as hard, because the black has been relegated to being lazy. Yeah. And to being a non-productive individual anyway, because they are marginally educated. See, all of this is systematic design. So when you now deal with a person that is of that low status in society, you have to make room for that person as it relates to having to isolate them from society.
Well, so, is it because, Brian, if they don't have the jobs and the resources, they resort to crime? It's not that they're just incarcerated. It's because they don't have the finances.
Well, if you push them out of the job, okay, if you literally put a system in place that works against the African person to designate him or her as non-productive in society. See, number one, we have to go back and realize that black people that think that we are somehow part of this American fabric is confused. We are not part of the American fabric. We were never included in the genesis of this country. So that's why Malcolm X declares that when a black person identifies himself, okay, with his master who oppresses him and cares just as much for the things and will protect his master's property over himself, there is a level of mental confusion that goes on, you understand, with that black person. So Malcolm said, if the slave master gets sick, the slave identifies with the master and says, we sick, boss. not you sick, boss, but we sick, boss. We not feeling well. If the house is burning down, you say, our house burning, boss. So that is a form of mental confusion. It is a form of mental sickness, if you will, mental illness. We talked about that. That for some reason has been pushed on black people today to reside to the fact that we are part of something that never, like I said, in its inception, in the genesis of this country, never included us. But yet we try to identify with it. When that happens, sweetheart, we go into a state of then, out of the confusion, into a state of trying to offset what was put in place and designed to keep us at the bottom. We go into that mode of augmenting, offsetting that by now overcompensating. What do I mean when I say overcompensating? Now we reach out to the institutions that are put in place that says that in order for you to get ahead, you need to have a college degree.
Okay.
Or we overcompensate for that. Okay. So now in our mind, we adopt the mentality that not only do I have to get the same degree that my counterpart has, but I have to get a higher form of the degree.
Yes.
Okay, in order to just be accepted and to compete. So now that begins to take place for the blacks that are not able to go to those higher levels of institution. They're relegated to the trade or the labor force jobs. And if they are not as good or better, now they try to offset. And the way that they offset that is, if I have one job that doesn't meet all of my needs and can't move up into upper level management because the stigma of racism is real here. And all I see in this Walmart I see the black floor managers, but the upper level managers that are making all of the decisions, they're all white. Then I get another job. I work 2 jobs or 3 jobs to offset that. So there's a lot that factors into what we as black people deal with as it relates to or on the basis of trying to fit into a system that wasn't designed for us and that never included us. So we're in this struggle, on how to balance that, how to comprehend that. What do we do to make this actually work? You understand?
Yeah.
Okay, so
and in that saying that when the Civil Rights Act of 1964-1965 was implemented, okay, that included African Americans, but it also included immigrants, right? So in other words, it's working for them, but it's really not working for us.
Civil rights is just what it says. They are rights that are based on the civil happenings and the civil movement of a people. Okay, so what I mean when I say that, the right to be able to access a counter and sit down and eat as anyone else would eat in a restaurant is a civil movement. It allows you to move into the place freely. It allows you to receive the same services freely as anyone else. Now, this is where civil rights is, because the inception of the Civil Rights Bill was in 1875, not 1965. 100 years later, that's those same civil rights that was put on the floor of the Congress, by Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner, comes back around and is revisited in 1965. There's nothing changed, basically. If you read the 1875 Civil Rights Bill and you compare it to the 1965, nothing changed. The wording is the same. Okay, so guess what? The slave was still not included in that, even though the Civil Rights Bill in its inception was written based on the fact that the government needed to correct some ills as it related to the formerly enslaved Africans that had been emancipated. Okay, so in 1875, that bill's hit the floor. Okay, and this, keep in mind with this also, this is right before 1877, which is the end of Reconstruction. Okay, so there were some things that they were trying to correct as it relates to the formerly enslaved African people prior to another all-out war starting, concerning these enslaved Africans and the country not really knowing what to do with all of these people that they had emancipated. Okay, so emancipation is a legal term. Okay.
Okay.
So all it means is that you free a person or persons in one fashion, whereby in another fashion you can enslave them again, or you can oppress them again in another fashion. Mm-hmm. So emancipation, from a standpoint of physically, let us out of chains, but by the same token, legally, it enslaved us. So what do I mean when I say that? Emancipation did not deal with the economic disparity that the government established, the Freedmen's Bureau, to deal with as it relates to black people. It did not deal with the property rights of black people, because the 40 acres and a mule concept theory, as good as it was in reference to those General Sherman putting that in place, did not happen. Wow. You understand what I'm saying? And it did not functionally deal with the education gap as it relates to the African person and the slave master, the oppressor. So even though emancipation may have helped in a way as it relates to the physical change, legally it did not do a thing for us. Okay, so we found ourselves in the same place. Okay.
Wow.
You understand?
Yes.
So I'll let you go ahead and answer that question.
Okay. Another question I have, we're looking at basically what's going on. We're getting ready, with Trump transitioning out and Biden coming in, and it is just amazing to see how people are responding to this and listening at some of the documentaries. And I encourage you guys to join in to those and listen as well, because what we're about to see is going to be very interesting. And a lot of people are saying, are we going to be able to balance this out? Some people that put hard work into this thing to get Biden and Kamala in are now sitting back saying, okay, what do we have here? And it looks at basically a lot of people voted for Biden and Kamala, Biden, because it was considered the lesser of two evils. So, hey, we're going to vote for Biden because we don't want what we got or what we've had. We can't do that anymore. So how do you look at that, Brian? How you say, we've been listening to a lot of commentaries on that, and people going back and forth about what are we going to do now? Where are we now? What's going to happen now? And not pleased with what they're seeing in reference to the cabinet he's selecting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, Biden's initial selections as it relates to his administration and some of the cabinet offices that he's looking to fill is an Obama throwback. Okay, so and I think Biden even initially referred to his own campaign, as many of the news pundits have also referred to, that it is the Obama administration 2.0. It's the Obama administration on steroids.
Wow.
Okay, so that's why he focused on, when he was campaigning, dealing with some of the same issues. Okay, one of the issues was the healthcare system, which you are a part of and which you are involved in, and the Affordable Care Act of the Obama administration.
Yes.
That was put in place. Biden wants to not only extend that, but add to that. He wants to add a privatization portion of that to come into play, to where they do open the floor in some capacity for insurance companies to compete with one another.
Okay.
Now, how that will affect the ACA, we don't know yet. Okay, but when you look at even some of the looking at the UN ambassadors to certain different countries, they were also in the Obama administration in some capacity. So I think that's what we're going to get from Biden and Kamala Harris. Like I said, I don't believe that they're really going to address a lot of the issues that Black people are having in the community today. So that's short.
Well, what are they saying that we're going to have to do as a culture to what would make it work for us at this journey, at this junction? What would it take for this cabinet to address our issues and to hear from us?
Well, I think one of the senators, who was it, Coburn, come out and stated that stating that Biden addressed Biden that he was not living up to his promises because his cabinet did not reflect the constituency that helped put him in office. The majority of the constituency to put him in office was those of supposedly the African American people. Without our vote, you said this earlier,
yes,
Biden would not have been elected in certain states, okay?
Yes.
Especially in some of the southern states.
Exactly.
That, again, voted majority Democratic. Okay, so I think when we look at this, when there's no demand as it relates to a group, then there's nothing that guides political interests to do anything for them.
But that falls on us.
Yes, that falls back to us. So we did not have a demand in place. Everybody else had a demand in place.
Okay.
Okay.
They did.
So we see that the Hispanics had a demand in place. Matter of fact, they got their legislation pushed through while Trump was still in office. We should have been smart enough to do that.
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of the immigration laws, like I said, they're going to revisit DACA. They're going to open up the borders again. That is going to happen.
Yes.
You're going to have a mass influx of immigration. So all of these things are going to take place. But when you do not have a demand in place, then policies cannot be put in place to do anything for you.
To address your issues, because you haven't given them anything.
You have to have a demand in place. We don't have a demand in place. When Ice Cube presented his plan for Black America,
right?
Though he was a entertainer, I read his plan for Black America.
Okay.
And it was good. I read it about 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
So I was very familiar with it. It was not a new plan. It was a revisited plan. It was no different from the UNIA with Marcus Garvey. It was no different from the Nation of Islam. It was just some of the wording was different, and they had to refashion the wording because of legality reasons. Yeah. But other than that, see, we fail to, as Black people, accept that when people are fighting for our interests, we are afraid to step away from the system that's in place and support as a group 100%, regardless of our differences, support the interests of ourselves.
Wow. We
will side with a government that have always been tyrannical as it relates to Black people and terroristic as it relates to Black people over our own interests. And unfortunately, we did this in this case.
We did.
Instead of us all coming together as leaders and sitting down with Ice Cube and his attorney and his team, yes, and saying, okay, let's tweak
it.
This contract for Black America. This is what we want to put in. This is what we want to pull out. See, now, perfect example of that is when the founders of this country went into isolation for 2 whole days to debate about the so-called Constitution that we now have. So when Thomas Jefferson sat down at the table, when John Adams sat down at the table, John Hancock, when all of these guys sat down together, Ben Franklin, they said, this is what we want to extract.
Exactly.
This is what we want to put in place.
Yes.
And this is how we want to run these newly formed states.
Yes.
Okay. So now it's a perfect example on strategy on how to get what you want.
And that's with almost anything.
Mm-hmm. It is with anything.
So in essence, we basically, the majority of the leaders, the black leaders, basically bashed this man. The Democratic leadership, they bashed Ice Cube.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I heard them calling him, crazy and all kinds of names, making the man look like a complete fool, an idiot. And he didn't get to where he was by being a fool, I don't think.
No.
So instead of getting with him and looking, getting him some good advice or coming together, getting a group to come with him. And I'm sure a lot of people agree with him, Brian, but were too afraid to come and step up to the table and say, brother, look, let me interject this. Let me get some more legal or some more politicians in on this to help you with this.
Well, you didn't need politicians because politicians have never done anything for black people.
Wow.
Okay, so
I knew that was coming.
He didn't need politicians. He had a great legal team around him. So he needed people that were normal, what I would call normal people, that was wise enough to say, here are the interests of the majority that's not reflected in the plan. So we cannot conveniently forget that the majority of black people are not middle-class people. The majority of black people are in poverty. Okay?
Exactly.
So what he needed was somebody to come and say, let's take this brainchild that you have, that is a revisit of some other brainchilds of some of our great leaders, Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad. Okay, let's talk about these men, even the SCLC, Dr. King. Let's talk about the W.E. Du Bois. Let's go back and revisit the Niagara movement.
Yes.
See, let's go back and let's look at Frederick Douglass' letter when he says, what is the 4th of July to a Negro? When he makes his speech in front of the National Women's Party. Okay, for the Democratic movement at that time. When he stands up and he says to them, I can identify with the liberty that you so-called have based on this day that you're celebrating called the 4th of July. He says, I can identify when my people are still in bondage, when my people are still suffering brutality. So we have to go back and we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
No, we don't.
Okay, there's enough out there to where we could take that same model, tweak it. What we have to do is coalesce around that which works for all black people. We are sometimes can be so indifferent and petty about things that we cut off our own nose
to spite our face.
That's exactly right.
Wow.
So that's where black people, we run into all types of issues when it comes to being jealous and envious of one another, and it prohibits us from working together for the interest of the whole group.
So we end up getting nothing.
And that's what we got out of this deal. Kamala and Biden they are no more than aesthetics. That's it. They're eye candy. Now, like you said, some of the black voting rights warriors that were out there that got, that helped turn cities.
Yes.
For Biden.
LaTosha Brown from Selma, Alabama.
Yes.
So she was part of that movement.
I mean, the thing is now they're, now they're seeing that possibly we made a mistake. Because this man is not addressing the issues that we thought he would address. Now, give or take, I don't know if there's personal interests involved or there were personal promises made But whatever the reason are, I think the true colors are now coming out. And like I said, we have to be realists. The Democratic Party, the Republican Party, two wings, but it's the same bird, and it still does not support the interests of black people. Never had, never will. You're dealing with the old Federalist Party, okay? Federalist Party of Washington and Hamilton. And then you're dealing with the anti-Federalist Party, which we call nowadays the Republican Party.
Yes.
Okay, the anti-Federalist Party, which consisted of Jefferson and Madison. So when you go back and you look, that's why I say it's so important to understand history. When you go back and you look at history, the Federalist Party was considered to be an elitist party. It was considered to be what the modern Democratic Party is called today. They are called the elitist liberal party. What was some of the things that the Federalist Party moved on? They were for big government. They opposed state government. Okay. So they pushed certain ideologies that still exist with the elite party today. They were for immigration.
Okay.
They were for taxes and tariffs. Okay. They were not for smaller government. They were not for the farmer. They favored factories and corporations over farmers and laborers. Okay, so when we look at this, this is nothing new under the sun, so to speak. It's the same playbook. And that's what my brothers and sisters, we have to understand. Nothing has changed. And guess what? When the Federalist Party was in existence and at its highest point, the slave was considered to be chattel. You know, all of the so-called laws to benefit this country, black people were not included. We have to realize that.
We don't get it, Brian.
We have to realize that. And I will keep saying this. There's nowhere the 14th Amendment, and let me just go ahead and throw this out there.
Break it down.
I want everybody, my book will be coming out.
Yes.
First or second, we're looking right now the deadline. Hopefully will be released by the end of March, but hopefully first or second week of March, I will be done. I break all of that down. I explain in detail why the 14th Amendment, why the 13th Amendment that supposedly abolished slavery did not abolish slavery. Okay. Why the 14th Amendment did not make us a citizen, and why the 15th Amendment did not give us voting rights. I go into detail about that, so I'm pushing my book right now. Yes. But anyway, we have to realize, guys, family, that you are not written into the fabric of this country.
No.
And the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, unfortunately, the wording of it was a workaround to keep you enslaved.
Wow.
And to keep you politically, economically, and educationally enslaved as long as this country exists. Now, whether we want to accept that or not, and black people, we get caught up into the romanticism of, oh, we've come a long way. Yes, there have been advancements. I would not deny that. Yes, there has been progress, but has it been at the behest of this government, or has it been at the behest of our own tenacity to survive? See, it took something for our foreparents and to actually go through slavery and yet maintain an optimistic outlook on life for their children. And though they could not themselves properly be educated, put their children through school by working till midnight most of the time in fields, trying to work a sharecropping system and doing all of these things. It was our tenacity to survive that put us over the top. Okay, so not the government really doing anything differently than what they've always done by way of making laws that would help us. Okay, so
Whew, that was
any other questions?
I had to digest that. I'm still trying to digest that. It is awesome. I mean, that Brian's gonna really break some stuff down and enlighten us on a level that anybody can understand. And it's been quite a challenge for me to stay out of the way, to let him focus and concentrate, so that we all will be able to benefit from this. Hopefully it'll fall on the right ears and into the right hands that will make a change for us. And that's what we need. We need answers. We need progress. We need help. We really need help. And in saying that, with the immigrants now being able to come in like they are, you're going to see even African American, especially our black men and younger women, young black men and women, being pushed further down, because no one is fighting for us. No one. They're fighting for Democrats, they're fighting for Republicans, but who's fighting for the African American people? No one. Mm-hmm. And I say that over and over again, and it doesn't sink in. It can't. I mean, I'm not a historian. I'm with one, but I'm not. But I see every day that we're being pushed further and further to the bottom of the totem pole. I go in hospitals now, and I'm seeing no African American doctors, no African American administration anymore. I'm seeing Asians, Koreans, Hispanics. Where are we? Where are we?
Mm-hmm. Well, the system has been designed, Janice, and I think we can't, we have to understand that we have the power within ourselves to educate ourselves and to create our own institutions that will educate and that will promote our interest for our own people. So when it's not a surprise, because the system is designed that way. Okay, so if you are irreplaceable labor, then that's what they do. They replace you. Okay, so if they replace you, then that means that you become invisible in society. Okay, wow. So they represent those that are not considered to be the maligned and the invisible of society. Now, there again, see, that goes back to here. That's why I love history. There is truly
yes, you do, Brian.
Nothing new under the sun. If we go back to the Second Treatise of Government by John Locke, and we look at chapter 5 on property, we'll understand what is happening as relates to ourselves being pushed down to the level of being labor force people. And once we are not able to function in that capacity anymore, we're pushed out of the system.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, there's Sanithia Perkins, who's a very, very dear friend of mine from Selma. I love her to death. She said, what you always say, Brian, we need our own to survive. Mm-hmm. We really do. Mm-hmm. There was a time we had our own, believe it or not. And that's so, to me, that is so out there. How was it in the 60s and the 50s that Black people had their own businesses and they were thriving? You know, I'm a product of a family that had their own businesses. And here we are in 2000, 2020, 2021, and we have literally slim to no Black businesses.
Well, you have to look at there are several dynamics to that. After Reconstruction, between 1900 and roughly about 1920, right up to the Great Depression, about 1900 and 1929, Black businesses flourished. That was also the period that you had the most at that particular time, black elites to ever exist in the United States. Okay.
Wow.
So you had the Madam C.J. Walkers coming along and the Ida B. Wells. You had these giants of people. You had the Marcus Garvey. So we saw that blacks really took the government, and what they did was fashioned it where it worked for them. They used the principles that were set in place without depending on the government in order to take care of themselves. So we do the same thing. There, Dr. Claude Anderson talks about that.
Yes,
he talks about the 5-tier system that he puts in place. So if we're going to rebuild our communities to where we're functional and black businesses come back, we must begin to reinvest in our own interests. That means we have to somehow get the government out of our business. Okay, so we cannot be dependent upon the government. Okay, dependency breeds complacency. If we become so dependent on the government that we can't do anything for ourselves,
we become complacent.
We become more and more complacent each year that goes by, to ultimately we live in a state of dormancy.
Wow.
And in a state of flux to where we are non-functional. And see, unfortunately, at times we teach our children to be dependent. We want to do everything for them. All of those things. Yes. So we have to look at the mentality that is developed, even by way of the government playing such a major role in our lives. Black people were always better when they unified together,
yes,
and said, we're going to build our own community. Yes. That's what Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood was about. See, that's what North Carolina was about. That's what Selma was about at one time. You understand? Yes. So, and when you look at your father's parents, they were from that 1920s, 1930s movement, where there was an educational boom with black people, where there were more black elites and business owners established during that time. And guess what? They passed that down to their children, which were your father. So understand, we can do it again. We we have to collectively stop looking down upon each other.
Stop hating on each other, being so jealous.
The black person that's in the ghetto, we have to begin to really see the mentality and how they are shaped by social media. They are shaped by television. They are shaped by all types of different venues that are part of the oppression from the enemy. So why is it when you look at news media, and I said this to you earlier, there are no more black-owned news media outlets. None. So who do you think control, if there are no black media outlets and Europeans control that, then what do you think they are going to do as it relates to the black person? That's why you never see anything good as it relates to being publicized about black people. We make the news when there needs to be a stereotyping of how black people act. Okay?
Yes.
Or we make the news now when there's another hanging called police brutality.
Wow.
But for all the good things that our community does, and for those that are helping in the community, there's no publicization of that. So we have to, there again, get back to creating businesses ourselves, coming together, investing in ourselves. You know, Neo Te Ansi means know thyself.
Know thyself.
In the Kemetic. So we have to get back to that. You understand? We have to get back to the spirit of Ubuntu from the South African concept. Yes. The Swahili word means that we function as one family. We operate as one. Yes. There is no separation. We are each other and in each other, that we promote each other. Everything we do as one unit. So we got to get back to some very powerful
Brian, that
principles.
was profound. That gave me chills when he said, oh my goodness, that we have to come back together. We have no unity. None. It is so sad and it hurts. It does.
Yeah.
Well, Facebook family, YouTube family, we're gonna have to leave you this evening. I think we've gone over our time, but it was worth it. It was so worth it. I am going to do we have a question. Can you see that, Brian?
No, it's just a statement.
Yeah, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
That's a powerful African proverb. So
thank you, Jackie. Thank you. Yes. I love you guys. There's no unity. Wow. Oh gosh. I mean, you guys, I'm going to do a watch party after this one. Next weekend, we're going to take it to a whole nother level because I know a lot more is coming out this week and we're ready. We're ready to put it out there. Mm-hmm. And I believe there's a wave coming. And we're going to catch this wave. And we're going to be on the way. We're going to ride it out. And we will overcome. Okay? We can do it again. We can. Thank you all. And have a good night.
And as Gil Scott Heron said, the revolution will not be televised. But we will start a revolution. Bye-bye, Facebook family, YouTube family. Love you.
We love you guys.
Bye-bye.